What's good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for as time progresses. I'm also going to talk about some very important levels to be watching for on Tesla, SPY, Nvda, and the QQQ, what's going on with the data that just came out, how all of this could affect the market moving forward. Before I break anything down, all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Anyways, looking at SPY, we have a very, very nice looking ascending wedge as things uptrending so far, but the trend is still bullish technically despite this, right? We're still making higher highs and higher lows. And the question is, how on earth is the market going to likely move going forward, and what are some important things to be watching for? So I just want to call out that it's been, the important data has just come out. Initial jobless claims was a bit higher than expected at 218,000. This helped the market just kind of like stay afloat. It is actually coming down just a tiny bit thanks to this, but it's not too bad. It's still holding up decently. But continuing jobless claims was very close to expectations. Everything else was just fine. So for the most part, the data was fine, besides initial jobless claims being a little bit hotter than expected. Besides that, we have some housing data coming out at 10 a.m. And then at 11:30 a.m., we have the 4-week and the 8-week bill auctions. And that's pretty much it. So it's going to be very interesting to witness. Now, when it comes to other things going forward, I just want to mention that the S&P 500 is still chasing all-time highs. It's only about 0.5% away from hitting all-time highs. It's getting closer, which means that there could be more upside coming, a bit more to get to those all-time highs before we see the market change course. Now, on top of this, there's more news coming out about how the New York Times is suing Microsoft and ChatGPT creator OpenAI, claiming that the publisher's intellectual property was improperly used to train large language models. This is going to be important. This is a big lawsuit, so we'll see how things go. On top of this, the U.S. appeals court dealt Apple a win on Wednesday, temporarily halting an import ban on the tech's popular smartwatches. This is once again going to allow Apple to sell its device despite the patent disputes with the medical tech company. So that's some good news for them, and this could be very positive for Apple. Besides that, millions of student borrowers aren't making their monthly loan payments, according to the Department of Education, and things are becoming more and more tight for millions of everyday Americans. And there's some talk about how more and more Americans are just missing their payments, about 40% of people. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. This is not great news whatsoever. And, unlimited debts is something that's not necessarily sustainable. So be very careful in getting into debt, guys. That's something that's worth noting. Now, let's just talk about how the charts are looking, how things are looking, in my opinion. So looking at SPY, we're going to actually start off with the 4-hour. The 4-hour is still on a slight uptrend. Watching this resistance right over here. It's looking quite decent. It's been uptrending very, very strongly thus far. But here's the thing about it. We have this rising wedge, and SPY still holding up between support and resistance. So we broke above 476, which is bullish. As long as we hold above this, we're going to be in a decent place. Our next target is technically to get very close to 478. We could see something like that. Now, we could always adjust this just a little bit if we do end up like kind of coming back down. Watch 476 is key support, and then if we need to try to hold above that. If we lose this, then our next target is going to be 475.5-ish. But in my opinion, and 476 being support, watch and see if we could hold this trend line very, very closely. As long as we hold this, we could actually bounce again, just continue to uptrend as the trend remains bullish. Now, what's appearing to happen is these massive hedge funds, these other institutions, they're trying to hold the market up for the end of the year, and that's likely going to continue. Tomorrow is going to be the last trading day of the year, so the market is going to likely try to hold up, and then we're going to see some big changes, especially in 2024, which I think is very probable. So could the market uptrend more? I think it still can. Watch support at 476. Let's see if SPY could bounce and eventually make its way up to 478 by the end of the day. That's a real possibility, if not by tomorrow. So I still think it's uptrending. I still think it's going to hold up. We'll be watching supply and demand. Now, on top of that, when it comes to the QQQ, we're seeing something else that's very simple. On the QQQ, we have a nice uptrend as well, making higher highs and higher lows. And we have a rising wedge that's been continuing to develop. Now, this could come down just a little bit and retest 412. We have support at 412. If that fails us, then we have 411.5-ish. That's where this previous breakout resistance would have been, which is now support. So we have those two supports to be watching for. It could actually come down just a bit and try to bounce. We have a nice uptrend. It's still making higher highs and higher lows, right? It's still uptrending very, very closely. And upon a bounce at 412, we're going to be looking for one more push up towards these higher levels up here to 413 to 413.5. So I can see this uptrend more. It's still holding up nicely, but just be careful with the rising wedge. It still is within the bounds of it. So just be a little careful, especially going into next year. This will likely hold up for the majority of the year. Could pull back towards 412 first and bounce. Overall, I still see it holding up quite nicely. On Nvda, in my opinion, it's still on an uptrend, right? Making higher highs and higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. So we have this gap to fill. If we see Nvda basically lose 495, watch for a drop towards like 494.41, then a bounce. But it's on an uptrend. As long as it holds above 495, we're going to be decent. If it loses 495, there's going to be a risk of it coming down to 492.5 and eventually 490. But so far, it's not really doing that as it's holding up. With this uptrend in place, we have this imbalance, which we just filled. So we managed to get to that 497 targets, which is the target I had a couple of days ago. And now Nvda is going to likely continue to uptrend and try to push towards that 500 area. We have these wicks to fill up here. 500 is on the table. I think that Nvda could continue to uptrend as time goes on. So watch supply and demand. We have resistance, tight resistance at 498 and then 500. We're going to likely continue to uptrend, and we have a very, very nice looking ascending wedge right now, so it's looking quite good. And if anything, I would say it favors the bulls a bit more. Aapl got a victory when it comes to the Court of Appeals, which is good news for them. That's part of why we're seeing Aapl trying to uptrend just a little bit. We managed to get above 193.5, so now we just have to try to hold above this, and this thing could start to turn a bit more bullish. So we had a falling wedge right here, right? And we continued to downtrend as time went on. Finally got a break out of it. We failed to break 193.5 yesterday. Now today we're trying to break it in the pre-market, but we need to try to hold above 193.5. If we hold this, there could be a push for 194 to 194.4 coming. I want to see Aapl get up to 194 to 194.4 to turn even more bullish. There is somewhat of a sign that we're changing our direction, and Apple's going to try to turn bullish, but we need to see if we could hold 193.5 first. If we fail to hold it, watch this gap at 193.2. If that fails us, then we have 193 and then 192.5 and then 192 all as support. So quite a bit of support between here and 192. Let's see if we try to hold. Let's see if we hold 193.5 and bounce, and I want to see this thing push up. If it breaks out, watch for 194 and then 194.4. All right, so watch those levels on Aapl. That's pretty much it for the video. Thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day, and I'll see you guys very soon for the next one in just a couple of hours. Thanks again, guys. Market to the moon because the long term is still very bright, and peace out.